This is not a horror story about a single event, or of a series of underhanded moves performed by a particularly problematic player. So this player is, out of character, an alright guy. Sure, he likes the prequel movies, and unironically thinks The Last Jedi was a good film, but other than that, he's pretty cool. He's also one of the ones who first got me into D&D, and in-game, he's a perfectly functional, if slightly unengaged player. But his characters. He has a habit, this man, of making his characters as game-breaking and overpowered as possible. And the worst part is, he doesn't do this through traditional methods, like studying the game like a science until you break it like a kobold's spine. I mean, he just flat out cheats. One of our first proper campaigns in our group was run by me, and he shows up with a Goliath barbarian, holding a mysterious black bag that he refuses to explain the contents of. Not even I, the DM, had any idea what was in it. A huge red flag, as I am now aware, but at the time, I thought nothing of it. This was my first campaign as DM, and I didn't notice the signs. Poor me. Everything was fine until about 2 sessions in. The party is on a ship that gets boarded by pirates during a storm. They have to fight off the pirates while the ship tosses and turns, and the rain threatens to throw the characters off the deck. Nice, if slightly unoriginal, if I do say so myself. The rest of the party gets stuck in. The wizard casts magic missile on some pirates attacking the captain. The battlemaster fighter runs to assist the struggling allied guards, and the rogue single-handedly fends off the reinforcements. Then it comes to the problem player's turn, and this is what he says. I point at the deck of their ship, and a cat leaps out of my bag. It jumps off the deck of our ship, and mid-air turns into a massive boulder. It smashes into the deck of their ship and sinks it. Dead silence from the table. I blink and ask him to, in the nicest possible way, explain what in the world he was talking about. I told my mimic to turn into a boulder and sink the enemy ship. You don't have a mimic. Yes, I do. It's in the bag. I didn't tell you because I wanted it to be a surprise. I was in shock. Another member of the party, who was an experienced DM, looked at me like Monty Burns looks at the hounds, and he was waiting for me to tear the problem player a new one. I could tell. And ladies and gentlemen, what did I say? Okay, ship sinks, new round. Wizard, what's your action? I was new, guys. I'm better than that now. We kind of ignored it and moved on, though I caught the experienced player staring daggers at me the whole rest of the night. In hindsight, I now know why and totally understand. In fact, if I'd been there today, I'd be doing it right along with them. For the next few weeks, the problem player relied heavily on the mimic, right up until that campaign ended not long after. And that was the end. Or it would be, but like John Tron himself once said, it doesn't end there. Within a week, he was back at it again. The next few incidents were small things. Him giving himself homebrew items or abilities that he relied incessantly upon, and which tended to break the game. But they were relatively minor things that didn't compare to what happened next. So we're playing Storm King's Thunder, and I'm DM again. The party gets to a pretty pivotal fight between a doppelganger impersonating a Dwarven king and his assassin bodyguards. The problem player is playing a Warforged, and was remarkably cagey about his backstory. His character gets stuffed up pretty bad, but the fight is almost over. I'm starting to think that I may just be able to salvage this. I'm not particularly fond of killing player characters. But then he says something that makes my blood run cold. Oh no, you guys, I might not survive this. Well, I'm gonna get out my mech suit and fight on foot. Trademark dead silence as he proceeds to take out of his bag a second character sheet, complete with completely different abilities, class levels, and health. He essentially switched characters right in the heat of the battle to one that had more health. Turns out he was actually playing a gnome that was driving a mech suit. Now, this actually sounds to me like an awesome idea, and I would have been happy to let it go, though probably with some serious debuffs to the gnome, provided he had expressed the idea to me beforehand. But no, he tried to slip it past me for the same reason he tried to slip the mimic past me, because he knew I would have disallowed it, or at least seriously penalized it, and he wasn't willing to sacrifice even a portion of his utterly broken build. From here, it only got worse. He made a gunslinger character for a Waterdeep game I ran, complete with several guns and ammo to burn. When I told him to take it out, since I hate guns in fantasy games on principle, he argued with me and demanded that I let him keep them. For a game that another friend ran, he had his character carry around these kegs of homebrew liquor that would instantly incapacitate anyone who drank it, unless they made a very high DC saving throw, 20 to avoid intoxication, 15 to stay conscious, but have disadvantage on all rolls for 24 hours. Then he'd just roleplay every monster into drinking it. The DM was somewhat of a pushover and didn't want to upset him, and win basically every fight without trying. The most recent, really egregious example of this was recently. Back when aforementioned pushover DM was preparing that campaign, he mentioned offhandedly to me one day that he had to download the Unearthed Arcana and read about a class that Problem Player wanted to play. My friends, the alarm bells that went off in my head were louder than the bells of Jerusalem. I demanded to see the class he wanted to play. It was a barbarian subclass that was the most unbelievably overpowered thing I've ever seen in the official rules. Not since Advanced D&D Cavalier have I seen Unearthed Arcana so perfectly meet their reputation. This subclass was a monster. They could cast spells almost as good as any cleric, cast a spell and attack on the same turn, had a bunch of combat abilities, and my personal favorite, an ability that let them touch a person, including themselves, and cause them to instantly regain a spell slot of up to 4th level. The limit? None. The cost? A minuscule amount of damage that the smallest health potion would render negligible. But it got worse. Problem Player wanted his barbarian to roll on the wild magic table every time his character attacked, cast a spell, or used an item. And he didn't want to use the one in the rules. Oh no siree, no. He wanted to homebrew his own wild magic table. And Pushover DM, being a relative newbie, almost fell into the same trap that I had during my early days, and I would not have it. I went to town. It was like the scene in every coming-of-age story where the bullied kid finally stands up for himself. For 5 minutes, I waded into battle, explaining to the DM just what Problem Player wanted, exactly why he was doing what he was doing, and precisely what he'd hoped to gain from it. I explained all the rules he was breaking and why they were there. I listed in great detail his reputation and the amount of times he's done this before. And by the end, man, I felt awesome. That's most of his incidents so far. The only thing I've neglected to mention are his stats. Every character he plays with, without fail, has at least one 18 and several 16s or 17s. I don't mention them though, because I can't prove he's fudging rolls, and he obviously denies it when confronted. Most people would just say he's just a jerk, but I disagree. For that to be the case, there has to be actual malice behind the decision, and I don't get that feel from him. He isn't a bad person, nor a bad player. He just really wants to play memorable, unique characters. But because he doesn't engage in roleplay or characterization, he has to do it by cheating at the rules. His faults at being a DM, though, are much harder to excuse. But that's another time. Yeah, this story is just sad. A player wants to be relevant, so he has to resort to cheating to make a lasting input, which leaves a sour taste for everyone else involved. What would you do in this sort of situation?